Is that rolling?
Yep, that's rolling.
Cool. Hi everyone, I'm Jamie from The Loaded Gamer, and I'm here at Gamer Dev Jam in Merimbula with the wonderful Hex. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. So you mentioned yesterday that you don't do this kind of event as often as you might do, say, a normal convention style thing. What have you noticed so far are the main differences between the two?
Well, for starters, I mean, I love conventions. I love seeing everyone kind of come together and sort of share their geeky passions and stuff like that. But my role at those events tends to be just signing stuff all day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I get to do a few panels and things like that. But this is very different because I get to kind of watch people in a creative process and talk to people about their ideas and watch how it's all developing. I learn a lot. We got to see some great talks from indie developers yesterday as well. Just feels like a very just exciting, creative environment to be in. So it's just interesting and a bit different.
What are the most interesting or exciting things that you've seen here so far?
I can't believe that there is one team that's making a game in VR using the Vive. That was amazing. And, you know, they've got at the moment a sword that, you know, the sharp edge of the sword will cut, and then if you hit it with the flat edge of the sword, it kind of just knocks the item away. Just little things like that you don't think about how difficult it is to program things and those little details. So I'm just really amazed. And then just the other thing is just some of the kids are so young and navigate programs like Scratch and Unity like it's no big thing. I'm so impressed.
Just on that point about VR, that kind of seems to be one of the big technological steps that the gaming industry is taking at the moment. What kind of potential do you see for VR to kind of influence or redefine the industry?
I mean, I'm really big into narrative games and action adventure games, so I'd really love to be able to experience stories in a more immersive way through VR. But I think at the moment it's still a very young technology. It's still growing and we're still kind of ironing out the kinks. So it'll be a while before I think we get to a state where VR feels fully immersive and it feels like something that we can play for long periods of time. Right now I find it very claustrophobic. But I think it's just so exciting that we're growing the technology and that we're experimenting with it.
Yeah. Of course, gaming's a constantly evolving medium. Aside from VR, what kind of evolutions would you like to see in the immediate future of gaming, either technical, conceptual?
I mean, I'd like to see the things that excite me most about gaming and that I think a lot of people who maybe don't play games are unaware of. Things like narrative choice and moral consequence and things like that in games. I think that's just really interesting, and it's what makes games so unique and what separates it from other mediums like film and literature, you know, that ability to participate in the story and to be involved. That player interaction. So I'd like to see that develop further and, you know, really capitalize on what makes gaming different from other mediums.
One of the things we think is important to discuss, and something we discussed last time we interviewed you, is women in the gaming industry. What ways do you think might encourage young women and girls to become more heavily involved in gaming, either at a development or consumer level? It's
a tough question because I think there really is a social shift that needs to happen, and that's a difficult thing to kind of force. You know, when we go to E3 each year, we interview sort of between 40 and 50 developers, and usually we manage to get between 2 and 4 of them that are women. And you hear a lot of people saying, well, you know, it's just chicks aren't into programming, chicks aren't into games, and, you know, we can't help that, so why should we be, you know, encouraging businesses to hire women if they don't want to be there? And that's just not the case. It's when there's an imbalance because there's been a sort of a social shift towards something being gendered a certain way, it takes a while for us to say, like, change that social conversation. I think at a school level, there's something that happens, you know, young girls, because we have a show called Spawn Point that's aimed at younger gamers. And what we see there is it's almost a 50-50, you know, shift between, balance between boys and girls that watch the show and are interested in games. But something happens around sort of 12, 13, adolescence, puberty and things like that, where I think a lot of girls socially tend to move away from tech and programming. And I think that's just because it's always been considered at that point something that's more of a male pastime. I don't know why, but changing that conversation and that sort of social idea is what's really important to keep women involved in tech and programming, and then we'll start to see more female developers, which will then inform the kinds of games that we get.
It might also be argued that, particularly when interacting with online multiplayer communities, female gamers can often encounter a somewhat hostile or unwelcoming environment.
Yeah.
What ways do you think that could be counteracted?
Look, I think it would be. It's a generalization to say this, but I don't think it's unfair to say that women are sometimes interested in different kinds of games than men. There's a reason why, you don't see a lot of women playing competitive multiplayer shooters, military shooters and things like that. One of the reasons is, as you just mentioned, it's a hostile competitive environment. But you see a lot of women getting involved in games like Borderlands or cooperative shooters because I think they just tend to be more drawn to that kind of experience. Again, this is a generalization, so any women out there who are like going hard in COD and like all power, that's awesome. But I think there's nothing wrong with that either if women are just sort of interested in different gaming experiences. And if we have more women making games, then we'll have a greater breadth of games that are catered to everyone. So I think, yeah, kind of creating games that are less gendered in a way. It may not seem like a game like Battlefield is gendered, but it tends to be all men with sort of male stories, and there's always a token female character. And, if we have more characters that are a little bit more gender neutral, or, stories about women in games that you wouldn't normally in a video game setting see a story about women. I think people like to see themselves reflected in the game. And the same goes for, race and ethnicity as well. We just, I think, generally need to make it a little bit more diverse across the board.
Mm. So things like Tomb Raider, for example, are kind of helping that, but I think there's a lot of room for improvement still.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tomb Raider was really important because she was originally designed as a character that was seen as a kind of sex symbol for games. So she was a character really designed for men to play. But I think even with that character, a lot of women were so excited to see a woman in a game who was strong and powerful and independent that they identified with her, even though her proportions were quite unrealistic. So when they redesigned her and made her more realistic and they gave her some pants and made her a character that was independent and accessible and relatable, both men and women enjoyed that game, and it was a really great sign of what can happen when you sort of stop trying to market a game towards a specific audience.
Mm. So with E3 having recently taken place and some huge announcements being made, the latter part of 2016 is looking like it's going to be a massive time for gaming. What upcoming releases are you most looking forward to?
I'm not sure if there's anything that I'm super excited about this year. The one that I'm really excited about is Horizon, but that was pushed, I think, to 2017. And Dishonored 2 looks really cool as well. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was like the best E3 ever. There weren't a whole lot of new IPs that were very exciting, and not a lot of games that felt like they were doing something incredibly new. But I think it's still because we're in the early stages of this new console generation. People are kind of just trying to get the ball rolling again.
And just generally, what games have you been playing recently and enjoying?
I just tried the Battlefield 1 beta, which is really cool. I thought I would be better on horseback, but I think I wasn't so great. I was excited to kind of see horses in a game like that. It's not something that you associate with Battlefield, but the other thing I'd like to see is a little bit more trench warfare in there, just really getting down in the mud. But the sound design is still so incredible. It really feels like you're there in because it was one of the most brutal wars, really, just seeing people's bodies fly away from you and stuff like that as they explode. But the biplanes when they come in, I mean, I'm excited to see more maps and see how it develops, but it was pretty cool to begin with. Yeah, those tanks, man. Stay away.
Last interview we did, you mentioned that The Witcher 3 was your favourite game at the time.
It still is, yeah.
Still is, yeah.
Of all time.
As far as I'm concerned.
I don't know if anything will ever top it, ever.
Sorry, we're just going to nerd out over Witcher for a second here.
It's just hard to imagine. I'm just a really big fantasy nerd, and all of the books that I've ever read, you kind of hold this thing in your mind of what would the most perfect fantasy setting be. And that was kind of it.
That's kind of it, yeah.
And so to be able to like roam free in a world like that was just so beautifully and oversaturated and crazy with the costumes and such, unique and exciting monsters to fight. And every single quest in that game had a story. All the little side quests that you think wouldn't be worth doing, they all had their own unique story. And all of these characters had something that was going on underneath the surface that involved a bit of investigation, and I just love that. Plus all the DLC, man. Like the first game...
That's what I was going to ask, yeah. Did you get a chance to check out both? Yeah.
I mean, far out. Blood and Wine was like a whole other Witcher game.
That by itself is bigger than most games. Like
it was crazy. Like how they've just given us so much content. Thanks, CDP.
Yeah. Good guys. Anyway, thank you very much, Hex.
Oh, pleasure.
For joining us here.